Every family carries a lesson. This is one of them. The morning I discovered my son had emptied my bank account, I almost called him immediately. Almost. The transfer had happened some time after midnight. By 7 o'clock that morning, the money was gone. Not a few $100s. Not a forgotten subscription. Not some banking error that would sort itself out by lunchtime. It was enough money to make most people panic. Enough money that friends would later ask me why I stayed so calm. The truth is, I wasn't calm. I was shocked. I was hurt. I was angry. But after 70 years of life, I had learned something that experience teaches better than any book ever can. The first person to speak rarely learns the truth. So instead of reaching for my phone, I sat quietly at my kitchen table and stared at the computer screen. The account balance hadn't changed. The transaction history hadn't changed. And the destination account hadn't changed. The money had been transferred to my son, David, my only child. The same son whose wedding was 4 weeks away. The same son I had spent 35 years loving. The same son who would call me 20 minutes later and pretend nothing had happened. I remember looking out the kitchen window and wondering if I had somehow misunderstood what I was seeing. People don't expect betrayal from strangers. They expect it from strangers. What hurts is when it comes from someone whose first bicycle you bought, someone whose broken heart you helped mend, someone whose college tuition you paid, someone whose mother spent her final weeks worrying about. That kind of betrayal lands differently. 5 years earlier, after my wife Susan passed away, I had added David as an authorized signer on one of my accounts. At the time, it seemed practical. Grief does strange things to a person. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't thinking clearly. David had stepped in to help manage bills, insurance paperwork, and all the unpleasant details that appear after a funeral. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my son. Eventually, life stabilized again. The account remained open. The authorization remained active. And over time, I stopped thinking about it entirely. Until that morning, I clicked deeper into the banking records. Engineers are trained to trust facts before emotions. Feelings can be wrong. Numbers rarely are. The transfer had been authorized. It had been processed successfully. No fraud alert, no security warning, no evidence that someone had hacked the account. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. David had done it himself. My coffee sat untouched beside me. Outside, a neighbor walked his dog. A delivery truck moved slowly down the street. The world carried on exactly as it always had. Meanwhile, a quiet question settled into my mind. Why? Not how. Not when. Why? David had earned good money. He worked in software sales. He drove a newer car than I did. He lived in a beautiful apartment downtown. And if social media was to be believed, he and his fiancée, Lauren, spent most weekends eating in restaurants expensive enough to make me check the menu twice. So why take the money? The answer should have been obvious. The wedding. For nearly a year, every conversation seemed to revolve around it. The venue, the flowers, the photographer, the upgraded photographer, the upgraded photographer, the custom suits, the live band, the destination honeymoon, the guest list. Every few weeks, another expense appeared. Every few weeks, another plan became more expensive. I had offered advice several times. David never asked for it. One conversation still stood out. 3 months earlier, we had been having lunch together. He was describing another wedding upgrade. I don't even remember what it was. Something involving imported decorations. I remember looking at him and asking a simple question. Can you actually afford all this? He laughed. Not rudely, just confidently. The way younger people laugh when they believe experience has become outdated. Dad, he said, it's an investment. An investment. I had spent 40 years as an engineer. I knew the difference between investments and expenses. A wedding was not an investment. It was a celebration. A meaningful one. An important one. But still a celebration. I let the conversation go. There are moments in life when advice becomes background noise, and David had reached that stage. The phone rang. I looked at the screen. David. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Instead, I answered, "Morning, Dad." His voice sounded relaxed, normal, carefree, as though nothing unusual had happened. "Morning? Everything good?" I stared at the transaction record still open on my laptop. Everything good. What a strange question. I wondered if he knew exactly how strange it was. I've had better mornings. There was a brief pause. Not long, just long enough for me to notice. Then his cheerful tone returned. "Well, listen, Lauren and I are finalizing the seating chart. We wanted your opinion on a couple things." The seating chart. I almost laughed. My son had transferred a substantial amount of money out of my account less than 12 hours earlier, and now he wanted help deciding where Aunt Margaret should sit during dinner. I listened. For nearly 10 minutes. He talked about wedding tables, guest arrangements, family politics, centerpieces. Not once did he mention the transfer. Not once. When the conversation ended, I placed the phone down slowly. And for the first time that morning, my disappointment turned into something else. Concern, because people make mistakes. Good people make mistakes every day, but hiding a mistake requires a decision, a choice, and choices reveal character. I looked at the wedding invitation resting on my kitchen counter. Elegant gold lettering, heavy paper, beautiful design, 4 weeks away. Then I looked back at the bank statement. Something wasn't adding up. The amount transferred was too large, far too large, even for wedding expenses. Which meant one of two things was true. Either my son had become astonishingly irresponsible, or there was a problem I hadn't discovered yet, a much bigger problem. I closed the laptop, walked to the study, and opened the filing cabinet where I kept decades of records. If David thought I wouldn't notice, he was wrong. If he thought I wouldn't investigate, he was even more wrong. The wedding was 4 weeks away. And for the first time since receiving the invitation, I found myself wondering whether it would happen at all. Because one thing was certain: the missing money was only the beginning. For the next 3 days, I behaved exactly as I always had. I answered David's calls. I replied to his messages. I listened to wedding updates. And I said nothing about the money. The silence wasn't easy. Every instinct told me to confront him, to ask the obvious question, why? But experience has a way of teaching patience. When I was younger, I believed problems became smaller the faster you attacked them. Age taught me something different. People reveal more when they think they are safe. And David clearly believed he was safe. On the 4th day, he invited me to lunch. A small Italian restaurant downtown. One of those places where the portions get smaller as the prices get larger. Susan used to joke about restaurants like that. I could almost hear her voice as I walked inside. David was already seated when I arrived. His smile looked normal. Too normal. The same confident smile he had worn since childhood whenever he thought he had everything under control. We ordered, made small talk, discussed the weather, discussed the wedding, discussed everything except the one subject sitting between us. Then the waitress walked away. David glanced at his phone. A brief look. Less than 2 seconds. But something about it caught my attention. His expression changed. Just for a moment. Concern. Not the kind you show when you're running late. The kind that appears when bad news arrives unexpectedly. Then it vanished. So quickly that most people would have missed it. Engineers spend careers noticing small things. Machines often fail gradually before they fail dramatically. People aren't much different. "You all right?" I asked. David looked up quickly. "Of course. You seem distracted." "No, just wedding stuff," I nodded. Wedding stuff. That answer seemed to explain everything lately. 5 minutes later, his phone buzzed again. This time, he flipped it face down. Immediately, almost reflexively. Interesting. The rest of lunch felt strangely rushed. David checked his watch repeatedly. His attention drifted. His smile appeared and disappeared. By the time we left, I was more convinced than ever. The missing money wasn't the whole story. Something else was happening, something David didn't want me to see. That evening, I sat in my study reviewing old records, not because I was trying to build a case against my son, because I was trying to understand him. There is a difference. The transfer amount kept bothering me. It simply didn't fit. Even if every wedding expense had doubled, the numbers still didn't make sense. The money exceeded what he should have needed by a wide margin. I began listing likely expenses: venue, photography, travel, entertainment, decorations, catering. Every estimate led to the same conclusion. The wedding explained some of the money. Not all of it, not even close. The next clue arrived unexpectedly. Two days later, through pure accident, I was helping my neighbor Frank move a bookshelf. Frank and I had lived on the same street for nearly 20 years. Retired accountant. Sharp mind. The type of man who could remember tax regulations from 15 years ago. While we worked, he mentioned seeing David recently. Ran into your boy downtown. Oh? Nice car. I laughed. He likes nice things, Frank nodded. then added something that stayed with me. Funny thing, though, what? He was trading it in. That surprised me. David loved that car. It wasn't practical. It wasn't necessary, but he loved it. For what? Frank shrugged. Didn't look like an upgrade. The conversation moved on. But my thoughts didn't. Why would David suddenly sell something he cared about, especially weeks before his wedding? That night, another piece fell into place. David called again. This time his voice sounded tired. The confidence I'd heard for months seemed thinner. Like paint wearing off an old wall. Dad? Yes? You ever feel like no matter how hard you try, things just keep piling up? The question surprised me. Not because of the words, because of who was asking them. David had always been the person with a plan, the person who believed every problem had a solution. For the first time in a long time, he sounded tired. I waited. When people finally begin telling the truth, interruptions are dangerous. He sighed. Never mind. No, I said quietly. Go ahead. Another pause. I don't know. Then he laughed. A nervous laugh. Forget it. Just wedding stress. Wedding stress. There it was again. The explanation that explained too much, and therefore explained nothing. After the call ended, I sat in silence. For the first time, I felt something beyond disappointment. Worry. Real worry. Not about the money, but about David. Because beneath every poor decision is usually a problem someone is trying to hide. The question was no longer whether he was hiding something. The question was how serious it was. 3 days later, I received my answer, or at least the beginning of it. The phone rang just after 10 in the morning. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello? Mr. Michael Thompson? Speaking. The voice belonged to a woman. Professional, polite, confident. My name is Karen. I'm calling from Horizon Financial Services. The company name meant nothing to me. I'm sorry, I said. I think you may have the wrong person. No, sir. Your information was listed as a reference. A reference? My stomach tightened. Reference for what? A brief pause. The kind customer service representatives use when choosing their words carefully. Then she said something that immediately changed everything. Your son, David Thompson, recently applied for a financial restructuring program. I felt my grip tighten around the phone. Financial restructuring. There are many ways to say debt. That is one of them. I'm afraid I don't understand. The woman hesitated. I'm sorry, sir. I may have already shared more information than I should. I didn't press. I didn't need to. The damage was already done. David was in financial trouble. Real trouble. The kind that produces phone calls from companies you've never heard of. The kind that makes people transfer money in the middle of the night. The kind that makes them smile too much at lunch. The kind that keeps them awake. When the call ended, I remained seated for a long time. The room suddenly felt smaller. The wedding was not the problem. It never had been. The wedding was merely the visible part. The debt was underneath, hidden, growing. And for the first time since discovering the missing money, I realized something that frightened me more than the transfer itself. The money could be explained. Debt could be explained. What worried me was something else. People don't usually take desperate actions because of the problems you can see. They take them because of the ones you can't. And I was beginning to suspect there was still a piece of this story I hadn't uncovered. A piece far more dangerous than the missing money. For the next week, I learned more about my Siz's life than I had in the previous 2 years. Not because he told me, because he didn't. The truth has a strange habit of revealing itself when people work hard to hide it. I began noticing things I should have noticed earlier. The expensive watch, the luxury gym membership, the vacations that seemed to appear every few months. The dinners in restaurants where a single meal cost more than Susan and I used to spend on groceries for a week. Individually, none of those things seemed unusual. Together, they painted a different picture, a picture of someone spending money faster than he was earning it. I didn't need bank records to know what that usually led to. Debt, the kind that starts quietly, the kind that grows in the dark, the kind that convinces intelligent people they can fix it tomorrow, then next month, then next year, until one day the problem is so large it can no longer be ignored. I knew because I'd watched it happen before, not in my family. During my career, good engineers, good managers, good business owners, people who weren't dishonest by nature, people who simply refused to admit they were in trouble. Pride is expensive, sometimes more expensive than debt itself. A few days later, David invited me to visit the wedding venue. Apparently, there were final decisions to make regarding seating, decorations, and timing. I accepted. Partly because I wanted to support him, partly because I wanted to observe. The venue was beautiful. A restored estate outside the city, gardens, stone pathways, large reception hall. Everything looked expensive. As we walked through the property, David pointed out details with forced enthusiasm. I say forced because once you know what to look for, Anxiety becomes difficult to hide. His smile appeared too quickly. His laughter ended too abruptly. His attention drifted whenever his phone vibrated. And his phone vibrated often, more often than any groom preparing for a wedding should experience. At one point, he stepped away to answer a call. I wasn't trying to listen. The words reached me anyway. "No, not this week." Pause. I said, "I'll handle it." Longer pause. "No, don't contact anyone else." Then silence. When he returned, he acted as though nothing had happened. I pretended not to notice, the same way he had pretended not to notice the missing money. Funny how families work that way. Everyone sees the truth. Nobody says it aloud. That evening, I received another unexpected piece of information, this time from Lauren, David's fiancée. She called to ask a simple question. At least that's what she thought she was doing. "Michael, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Has David seemed stressed to you lately?" The question immediately caught my attention. "What makes you ask?" She hesitated. The hesitation told me more than her answer. "I don't know. Something feels off." I remained quiet. People often continue talking when silence makes them uncomfortable. Lauren was no exception. "He keeps saying everything is fine." Another pause. "But it doesn't feel fine." "What specifically?" "I don't know." That answer was honest. She wasn't calling because she had evidence. She was calling because she had instincts. Good instincts. The kind people often ignore. "I've asked him several times," she continued. "He always says it's wedding stress." There it was again. Wedding stress. The explanation that had become a shield for everything else. I asked a few careful questions. Nothing aggressive, nothing leading. By the end of the conversation, one fact became painfully clear. Lauren knew less than I did, far less. She knew the wedding budget had increased. She knew David seemed distracted. She knew he wasn't sleeping well. What she didn't know was the debt, the transfer, the phone calls, the financial restructuring company. None of it. After we hung up, I sat alone in my study for a long time. That realization hurt more than I expected. Because now the problem wasn't simply money. It was dishonesty. The kind that spreads, the kind that forces people to tell one lie after another until they can no longer remember where the truth ended. 3 days later, the final piece arrived. Not through investigation, not through luck, through David himself. He showed up unexpectedly at my house on a Sunday afternoon. The moment I opened the door, I knew something had changed. He looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally, like a man carrying something heavier than he could manage alone. "Can I come in?" Of course. We sat in the living room. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. David stared at the photograph of his mother sitting on the mantel. Eventually, he sighed. "Do you ever feel like you can't tell people when you're struggling?" I looked at him carefully. This was the closest he had come to honesty since all of this began. "Sometimes, I mean really struggling." The room felt very quiet. "You can always tell me." He nodded, then looked away. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Fear. Real fear, not embarrassment, not frustration, fear. For a second, I thought he might finally tell me everything. The debt, the money, all of it. Instead, he stood. Never mind. My heart sank. David, he stopped. You don't have to carry everything yourself. His eyes met mine for just a moment. Then he forced a smile. I'm fine, Dad, fine. The most dangerous word struggling people ever learn. He left a few minutes later, and I remained seated long after the front door closed, because I finally understood what had happened. The money wasn't taken because David was greedy. It wasn't taken because he didn't love me. It wasn't even taken because of the wedding. The money was taken because he was drowning. And pride had convinced him that asking for help would be more painful than betraying someone's trust. For the first time, I understood why he had done it. What I still didn't understand was how he expected this to end. Because the debt was larger than the transfer, much larger. And sooner or later, every hidden problem demands payment, whether you're ready or not. 3 days later, that payment arrived in the form of a letter addressed to Lauren. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. I know because I happened to be at David and Lauren's apartment that afternoon. Lauren had invited me over to review a few final wedding details. David was at work, or at least he was supposed to be. The wedding was now less than 2 weeks away. Everyone should have been excited. Instead, it felt as though an invisible storm was gathering just beyond the horizon. Lauren opened the front door carrying a stack of seating charts. She looked tired, not exhausted, just worn down. The kind of tiredness that comes from carrying unanswered questions. We spent nearly an hour discussing wedding arrangements, who should sit where, which relatives needed to be separated, which family members would complain no matter what happened. For a little while, everything felt normal. Then the doorbell rang. A delivery driver. Lauren accepted a small stack of mail. Most of it looked ordinary. Advertisements, bills, wedding-related envelopes. Then one envelope caught her attention. She frowned, turned it over, looked at it again. "What is it?" I asked. "Nothing," but it clearly wasn't nothing. The envelope was addressed to David. Bright red lettering across the front. Final notice. I watched her expression change. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. "What kind of notice?" I asked, gently. She shook her head. I don't know, but she did know. Or at least she knew enough. People recognize warning signs even when they don't want to. She placed the envelope on the counter, then immediately picked it up again. The internal debate was written across her face. Open it. Don't open it. Trust him. Verify. The same conflict many people face when something feels wrong. In the end, she didn't open it. She set it down, walked away, and tried to continue our conversation. Tried. Neither of us succeeded. The envelope remained on the counter between us, like a third person in the room. When I left that afternoon, it was still there, unopened, waiting. The next evening, my phone rang. Lauren. The moment I heard her voice, I knew. She had opened it. Michael, her voice was shaking, not dramatically, not hysterically, worse, quietly, the way people sound when certainty leaves them. Can you come over? I didn't ask questions. I simply said yes. 20 minutes later, I was sitting at their kitchen table. The letter lay open in front of her, alongside several others. Several. That surprised me. Apparently, there hadn't been just one letter. There had been many. She had simply never seen them. Collection notices, late payment notices, loan correspondence, financial warnings, a trail of problems stretching back months, maybe longer. Lauren looked as though she hadn't slept. Did you know? The question hung in the air. I chose my answer carefully. I knew something was wrong. She stared at the documents. I had no idea, and for the first time, I truly believed her. She wasn't acting. She wasn't pretending. She had been kept in the dark, the same way I had. Only she was discovering it all at once, which is a cruel way to learn the truth. A key turned in the apartment door. David. The moment he walked inside and saw us sitting there, he stopped. Not because he was surprised to see me, because he saw the letters. The room became silent. No one spoke. No one needed to. The truth was sitting on the table. Finally, David set his keys down, slowly, as though delaying the inevitable. Lauren spoke first. What is all this? He closed his eyes, just briefly. A man preparing for impact. I can explain, the oldest sentence in the world, and rarely a good sign. Then explain. David sat down. For several moments, he simply stared at the table. Then something unexpected happened. The fight left him. Not his anger, his defenses. Months of pretending, months of hiding, months of carrying the weight alone. Gone. And suddenly, he looked younger, not older. Younger, like the frightened teenager who once called me after backing my car into a mailbox. Like the boy who used to tell his mother everything. The mask had finally cracked. It started 2 years ago. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Lauren didn't interrupt. Neither did I. So he continued. A business investment. A failed partnership. Credit cards used to cover losses. More borrowing to cover previous borrowing. Then the wedding. Then more expenses. Then panic. Then desperation. The story unfolded piece by piece. Each decision made sense in isolation. Together, they formed a disaster. By the time he finished, the room felt heavier. Lauren was crying silently, not because of the money, because of the secrecy, because trust had been removed from the relationship without her knowing. Finally, she asked the question I had been waiting for. The money from your father. David lowered his head and nodded. No excuses, no explanations, just a nod. The admission somehow hurt more than denial would have. Lauren looked at him for a long time, then at me, then back at him. Why didn't you ask for help? The answer came immediately, too immediately, which meant it had lived inside him for a long time. Because I was ashamed, nobody spoke. Because there wasn't much to say. Shame is a strange thing. It convinces people that hiding a problem makes it smaller. Usually it makes it larger, far larger. Eventually, David turned toward me. For the first time since all of this began, he looked me directly in the eyes. I knew you'd notice, I nodded. I figured. I just thought. He stopped, struggled, then finally said it. I thought I could fix everything before you found out. The honesty hurt, but it was still honesty, and honesty was progress. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then I said the thing I had been carrying for nearly 2 weeks. David, I was never disappointed that you needed help. His eyes filled. I was disappointed that you believed you couldn't ask. The room became very quiet because everyone understood the difference. And in that moment, the wedding stopped being the most important thing in the room. Trust became the most important thing. The money could be repaid. The debt could be managed. The wedding could proceed. But trust would require something far more difficult. The truth, the whole truth. And for the first time since discovering the missing money, I finally believed we were getting close to it. For a long time after David finished speaking, nobody said anything. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was necessary. Some truths need room to settle. Lauren sat quietly beside him. David stared at the table, and I found myself looking at the photograph of Susan on my phone, a picture I carried everywhere. There was a time when she could calm a room simply by walking into it. I wondered what she would have said. Then I realized I already knew. She would have listened first, just as she always did. Eventually, Lauren spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, just honestly. Why didn't you tell me? David's eyes remained fixed on the table. I was afraid. Afraid of what? That you'd leave. The answer landed heavily, because it wasn't entirely unreasonable. People leave relationships for far less. Lauren nodded slowly, as if she understood the fear, but not the decision. You gave me no chance to decide. David closed his eyes. The truth of that statement was impossible to argue with. For months, he had been making choices on behalf of everyone around him. Choices based on assumptions. Assumptions about what they would think, how they would react, what they would tolerate. And every one of those assumptions had pushed him further away from the people trying to love him. Finally, he turned toward me. Dad, I don't know how to fix this. For the first time since all of this began, I believed him. Not because he was helpless, because he had finally stopped pretending he wasn't. I leaned back in my chair. That's the first honest thing you've said in weeks. A faint smile appeared on his face, then disappeared. I mean it, I know. The room grew quiet again. Then I said something I'd have been thinking about for days. Do you know what disappointed me most? David shook his head. The money. His expression tightened. I continued. Not because of the amount. Now he looked confused. If you had called me and told me you were in trouble, I would have helped. Lauren looked at me. David looked at me, both waiting. The money was never the issue. I paused. The secrecy was. Nobody spoke. Because everyone understood. The money could be repaid. Trust required something different. Trust required honesty. And honesty is often more expensive than money, especially when you've spent months avoiding it. A few days later, David called every company he owed, not because I forced him, because hiding had stopped working. He met with a financial counselor, created a repayment plan, canceled several unnecessary expenses, sold things he could no longer justify keeping. The luxury car was the first to go. Ironically, none of those actions were nearly as painful as the conversations he had avoided. Telling Lauren the full truth, telling himself the full truth. Those were harder, but they were also where the healing began. The wedding changed too, not dramatically, but noticeably. The extravagant upgrades disappeared. Several expensive additions were canceled. The guest list became smaller. The plans became simpler. And strangely enough, the wedding became better, more honest, less performance, more meaning. The week before the ceremony, David came to my house. We sat on the back porch as the sun began to set. The same porch where Susan and I had spent countless evenings talking about life. For a while, neither of us said much. Then David handed me an envelope. Inside was a repayment agreement, every dollar documented, every payment scheduled, every detail written clearly. I looked up. "You didn't need to do this." "Yes," he said. I did. The conviction in his voice surprised me, not because he was speaking firmly, because he was speaking responsibly. There is a difference. I folded the paper, placed it back inside the envelope, and nodded. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt since this began. Hope. Not because the debt was gone. It wasn't. Not because trust had been fully repaired. It hadn't. But because honesty had finally entered the room. And honesty has a way of making difficult things possible. 4 weeks after I discovered the transfer, I watched my son get married. The ceremony was beautiful. Not because it was expensive. Not because everything went perfectly. Because it was real. As I watched David and Lauren exchange vows, I noticed something different about my son. The tension was gone. The pretending was gone. For the first time in a very long time, he looked free. Not free from debt, free from hiding. After the ceremony, he found me standing alone near the edge of the reception hall. For a moment, we simply stood there together, father and son, neither needing many words. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I should have told you." I nodded. "Yes." Another pause. Then I placed a hand on his shoulder. "But now you know." His eyes filled slightly. So did mine. Age doesn't eliminate emotion. It simply teaches you which emotions matter. Years from now, I doubt anyone will remember the flowers, the decorations, the menu, or the seating chart. People rarely remember those things. What I remember is a lesson that took my son far too much pain to learn, and perhaps took me 70 years to fully understand. Most problems in life are manageable. Debt is manageable. Mistakes are manageable. Failure is manageable. What becomes dangerous is silence. Silence allows fear to grow. Silence allows shame to grow. Silence convinces people they must carry burdens alone, and burdens carried alone eventually become heavier than they need to be. The money eventually made its way back into my account. But that isn't the part of the story that matters. What matters is that my son learned something far more valuable. Asking for help is not weakness. Pretending you don't need it often is. And if life has taught me anything, it's this. The strongest families are not the ones without problems. They're the ones willing to face those problems together. That, more than money, is what keeps a family wealthy. The strongest families are not the ones without problems. They're the ones willing to face those problems together. That, more than money, is what keeps a family wealthy. Now I'm curious, what do you think was David's biggest mistake? Taking the money or hiding the truth? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy thoughtful stories where wisdom matters more than revenge, consider subscribing to Wisdom Wins Stories.